Hello friends, this is David Sami with A Christian Journey. I want to apologize that I have not been able to load up any videos for these past 2 or 3 weeks. We have had problem with our software, with our editing software, and just been so busy that I really have not had the time to load up any videos, but hopefully we are back on track and be able to now be more regular. Now, last time we talked a little bit about human nature, that how the way we are naturally and what germinates and grows in us, it brings us to be the object of God's wrath, that there is an enmity between us and God. But how did we become this way? Obviously, God did not make us this way. What went wrong in human story that made us to become naturally a kind of being that is in rebellion against God and ultimately becomes the object of His wrath? That what grows in us naturally make us that way. Now, sometimes you may think, well, what is the big deal? Why do we really want to know exactly how we are naturally? Because I think what we have embraced is a humanistic view of human nature, where we think human nature is actually good, or at worst is neutral toward God. It can choose God or it can deny God. It's up to Him. And we are naturally okay. And this is not what the Bible teaches, what the New Testament teaches. So many times when we begin our Christian walk, if we don't have a right grounding on our own understanding of our own nature, we eventually become disillusioned with God, because we would have certain expectation of God. And if those expectations are not fulfilled, we begin to be disappointed in our relationship with God. And in my judgment, all deviancy from orthodoxy begins with a misunderstanding of the nature of man and the nature of God. We need to really be clear on these two subjects in order to have a right foundation for our Christian growth, that down the road we be sound and secure in our understanding. So to me, it's very important to have a biblical point of view of human nature and not embrace the culture's understanding and infuse it into Christianity. That Christianity and culture will become one and the same as far as what is our nature, what is the nature of man. So that's why we want to take this up and do the part 2 of what human nature is like from God's point of view, from Bible's point of view. Now, if we turn to Romans chapter 5, verse 12 to 21, these are some key verses that tell us what went wrong with human race. All I want to do is pick up 2 verses, verse 12 and verse 18. Verse 12, we read, "Sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin. And death is spread to all men because all sinned." Past tense. You see, death is spread to all mankind because of Adam. Adam was unique in that he was the head of humanity or human race. As a matter of fact, the word Adam actually also means human, humanity. When he sinned, his action impacted all his posterity. He represents all who would come from him. So we all became sinners as a result of being related to him. When he rebelled, he made every offspring that would be born out of a union of a man and a woman come to existence in rebellion against God, separated from God. And it's all because of his action that had an impact in all his posterity, that everyone that comes from him is born into that condition. We don't become sinner because we sin, but we sin because that's who we are naturally. Now we want to see actually how does the Bible describe our natural state in relation to God? How are we naturally from the Bible point of view? Now in book of Ephesians chapter 2 verse 1, Paul is reminding the Christians in Ephesus of their state prior to their conversion. We read, "You were dead in trespasses and sin." Now obviously he's not writing to a bunch of dead people. They were dead spiritually. They had no inclination toward God. And then he goes on to say, "We all live in the passion of our flesh, carrying out the desires of body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind." That a natural person lives to fulfill his desires, whether his bodily desire, his desires of his mind, and he naturally, what grows in him makes him to become object of God's wrath. That's how natural human beings are. They just want to go on, and we want to just fulfill our desires. Now Ephesians 4:18, it goes on to say that they, natural man, they are darkened in their understanding. They're alienated from life of God due to their hardness of our heart. That we naturally are alienated from God's life, and that our understanding is actually darkened, and there is a hardness of our heart toward God and toward the things of God. Now this is a picture of mankind. This is how we are naturally. But what do we think of as spiritual things when we get confronted with the spiritual things? 1 Corinthians 2:14, it says, "The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him," or they're foolishness to him, "and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned." That we naturally, we do not accept the things of the Spirit of God. We are not able to understand them because they're foolishness to us. We want to have nothing to do with the spiritual things. But you see how today we think everybody is looking for God. Everybody is looking for spiritual things. But when we read the Bible, it says that the natural person does not have the ability to understand a spiritual thing. He does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God. Now let's see how the state of our mind is. Romans 8:7, we read, "For the mind that is set on flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. And those who are in the flesh cannot please God." You see, all of us, prior to our conversion, are in flesh. We are naturally in flesh. So we can say a natural person's mind is hostile toward God. It does not submit to God's instruction, is not able to, and it cannot please God. You see, we think our problem is in our mind. We think only if we can convince someone, give good enough reason to someone for the existence of God, then the person will come to God. But in reality, the problem is not in the mind, it's in the heart. Our mind is not neutral toward God, but it's hostile toward God. A natural man does not want God. See, this is so hard for us to understand because we've been conditioned to think everybody's looking for God. But in reality, the mind of a natural person is in hostility with God. Now, the final conclusion about our state before God is found really in Romans 3 verse 10. You can read more verses there because Paul gives a concluding thought about humanity at large. All I'm reading is just one verse, verse 10, where he says, as it is written. Now this is an important phrase. This would be equivalent to what we may say today, this is what the Bible says, or this is what God says. It is written, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands, no one seeks for God. Now, no one is righteous, that none of us, no human being is not the way he ought to be. None of us are what we should be. Not even one. This is mind-boggling a statement. When you fully understand that in God's point of view, if he was going to judge us judicially, none of us will be able to stand his scrutiny, his judgment, because none of us are what we ought to be. None of us are righteous. Not even one person. And none of us understands. You see, we naturally don't think that way. We don't have the consciousness to realize that we are not right with God. It's almost like we live our life as if there is no God. And here goes on to say that none of us seeks for God. You see, nobody is looking for God. Yes, most of us naturally may be looking for what God can do for us, but we are not looking for God himself. When we are in trouble, we want to pray and we want God to come and rescue us out of our situation. But after that, we really don't have any need for him. We don't want him. Jesus told many people that followed him, you follow me because you saw me giving you bread. Most of the people that had a need come to Jesus to heal their son, their daughter, or help them in their demonic possessions or so forth. But did any of them wanted Jesus himself? You see, that's why we want our understanding of our nature and who we are to be shaped by Bible, by people who had revelation from God. And in a sense, we can say God revealed his opinion through this individual to us. This is how God sees us. This is how we are in the eyes of God, that none of us seek after him. But if none of us seeks after him, how do we come to Christ? See, typically we think, okay, well, we'll go tell someone mankind is neutral. He can either choose God or not come to God. It's up to him. All we want to do is let him know how much God loves him and God has a wonderful plan for his life, and everything is so positive. And why wouldn't you, God? Why wouldn't you want to come to God? But you see how we understand human nature determines how we share the gospel. But you see, when we begin to share the gospel with a wrong understanding, those people sooner or later will have problems because their understanding is distorted. How they see themselves and how they see God gets distorted, and their life experience does not match what their understanding of who God is. There comes a gap because we begin to go off track. I think it's so important to preach the gospel in the light of who mankind is and be able to convey the truth and allow God to convert the person. Our primary job is to share the message and allow God to convert the individual, because we don't want somebody to just have a change opinion. We want God to cause them to be born from above. And we have no ability to make someone to become born from above, but God does. So Hopefully on the following videos, we get more into that to see how we share the gospel and how do we come to Christ. I did a video about that, how we come to Christ, but maybe I try to make it a little more comprehensive and add a few more thoughts in there so that hopefully, at least from my perspective, be able to communicate how we come to Christ. I'm a great example of a person who had no interest whatsoever in Jesus. I didn't want Jesus. I had another religion. Why would I want to come to Jesus? But you see, I'm a great example, not because I chose to come to God, but God chose me and He drew me to Himself and caused me to be born again. So, well, may the Lord be with you. May He watch over you. May He keep you. And may He make His face to shine upon you until next time, as we get more delve into these questions. Until then, may the Lord be with you. This is David Sami with A Christian Journey.